Hi there and welcome back. And to any new viewers, I please ask that you like the video and subscribe if you like the content that you're seeing. I want to see stuff coming up in the future. And my current goal right now is to reach 500 subscribers. So with that out of the way, today's going to be a little bit of a different video. Now, normally I like to talk about guitars. I always have guitar review videos, but today I'm actually going to review differently in that I'm actually going to discuss my experience, my own personal experience, over 30 years of having played tube amps and then having to make the switch to digital modelers, which was a big thing for me when it happened. I was old school. I always believed tube amps were the way to go. I was refusing to go to the digital modelers for quite a while, and then it just happened that I had to make the change. So a little bit of the backstory is that I started playing in the early 90s. My first real guitar amp was actually a PV Bandit that I could jam in bands with. And eventually, by the mid 90s, I graduated up to 5150 head and 412 cab, the original block letter I actually had in 1995. And that amp I had for quite a while until I sold it when I went to college. And then didn't have a good amp for a while until the late 2000s when I actually had picked up a 6505 plus head and 412 cab to start jamming in bands again. And that was sort of my main rig for a while up until I got this setup, which was Mesa dual rectifier, 100 watt head, and the 412 cap. So that was sort of like my jamming setup when I first started going back to really being serious about jamming again and playing in bands. I had this back in 2017. I had an older version of the tube amp as well that I used for a little while. When I played in a Metallica tribute band, I actually had this setup as well. But setup is what I had starting in 2017. So for a long time, I'd always believed in playing tube amps, and that was it. So the real evolution of changing from playing tube amps came when I started playing in a power thrash metal band called Siren. So I started off playing gigs using this setup here, and it was good. Good sound. Of course, you can't fault this kind of a tube sound, but as we all know, it's not always consistent night after night with tubes, right? And volumes and whatnot, tend to change. So I had used this, and of course I had, a pedal board. I've got a pedal board set up here, but this isn't what I was using at the time. I was using, a few effects, always a tube screamer in front of a high gain amp to, tighten up the gain sound on an amp. And that was sort of like my go-to for, I'd say for the first couple of years. And then eventually, having played enough gigs, bringing this equipment up and down stairs was, especially the cab, was a lot. Like, it was hard on my back. As you get older, this stuff it hurts after a while. So I had actually moved down to using this rev head up here, which was a 40 watt tube head, into just a 212 cab. So basically half the size of this. I don't have my cabs here at the moment. So I had moved to that setup using a 40 watt tube head into a 212 cab. And I really love that sound. I used that for a couple of years. We recorded our first album. That was my setup. And then when we played live, I used to get a lot of compliments on my tone. Of course, the Rev cab actually had WGS Veteran 30 speakers, so different from the vintage 30, the traditional sound that you hear in metal most of the time for the last 20 something years. But so that was sort of like my sound. Now, as the band evolved, I had to kind of change my sound a bit for traveling purposes. And actually, a little backstory is that I actually used the first digital type of processor I ever used was actually a Line 6 HD Pro 2 that I used when I was in a Metallica tribute band at one time. And I used it more for the effects than anything, but I used that through a dual rectifier as well at that time. But that was sort of my first time using that, because before that I'd always used pedals, but for convenience I wanted something a little more condensed, so I'd gone to like a digital effects unit. Now I actually also had a Boss GT8 pedal board that I used for effects at one time, but that was just because I was using so many effects. I didn't want to use so many pedals on a pedal board, so that was part of that reason. So, but anyway, but with Siren, as time went on and we were playing more and more shows, even condensing our equipment now, we had started using an in-ear monitoring system. And with that, we had to get a big rack set up. We all had our own in-ear monitors. We actually had gotten, our drummer got a Behringer X32 system, so that we had our own mix for monitors. And it was a big rack. I think it was like a 14 or 16 unit rack. So we had this big rack. And as well, we had video screens that we would use. Sometimes we would bring two, which is more like big TV screen, big TVs, big monitors. So we had to use more of that when we traveled. So we had to kind of condense both the guitar equipment, guitar and bass equipment, and then also kind of make it go through the in-ear system. So like I could have used my Rev head and my 212 cab, but then I'd have to get one of these, like I think they're like a torpedo system, something to go DI, or get an amp head that had DI out of it. Now I had researched a bit of that, and for like condensing equipment down, especially going to a pedal board, was the smartest thing to do at the time, right? So what I had actually done is I researched, there's Kemper, there's Axe Effects, there's the Line 6 Helix, which I was really interested in, but I ended up actually settling on this guy, which was the Head Rush pedal board, for a couple of reasons. Was that it had all the stuff I liked. I liked the digital readouts on the pedal board. The touch screen was really good, but the DI to our in-ear system and to front of house was actually the big reason that I needed to do this. And our other guitar player as well had gone to using this as well. So the convenience of it was that the sound was consistent every night. I had actually found a way. I'd started learning about IRs and how to use IRs, and I had actually gotten IRs put into this that were actually from my Rev 212 cab. So it was actually with the WGS Veteran speaker, and I actually got that put into the Head Rush board to get as close as a sound as I could to what I was using with a tube amp, right? Of course, they didn't have the Rev Generator amp in it, but the Helix did, which I wish they had it in the Head Rush, but they didn't. But the 5150 that I come to know really well, I used that, and that's what we use. Actually, even to record our second album was through that system, was through a Head Rush. Now, the first thing I'll say that's not good, and I actually have, where is it? I actually have this little Head Rush board that I use as a backup. Now, anybody that knows me, traveling, touring with me, I bring a backup for everything. I have backup, extra batteries, extra cables, extra everything, because you never know when something's going to fail. And what I liked about this is like everything's in your board. Every effect, every pedal, your amp, everything's condensed into this one big pedal board. But if this goes down, you've got nothing. And that always worried me. So that's why I'd gotten this little guy for myself, just as a backup with just the basics that I needed, which would have been clean, rhythm, and a lead tone. And if I didn't have a chorus or delay or something, no big deal, right? At least I can get by if something went wrong. And that's sort of been like, that was like my touring rig for 2 years. And it never went down. I never had to use the little guy. But the other thing is that I always brought one of these powered cabs with me, because you never knew if the sound system was going to be good or not, and that it could handle all like the amps and everything, your own in-ear monitoring. I liked having this. I used it more like a guitar cab, or actually put it at the back of the stage facing up towards me, instead of like having it in front of the stage facing this way to me, which I see a lot of guys actually doing. I didn't do that. I like to have it more like a guitar cab. And most of the time I would bring these two, one for me and one for the other guitar player, if we needed them, which I would still use on stage most of the time. There was only a couple instances where we didn't bring them. And there was one time in particular that I'm not going to name I'm not going to mention the venue. It's a well-known venue, but we had a nightmare gig because we didn't get a proper sound check. Now, we had our big our big rack system, and everything's set. Like your volumes, our own volumes, everything's set. The front of the house needs to plug in, but when the sound guy saw our Behringer rack system and everything, he was like right away, such a bad attitude. Tried to do this weird quick connect system to his board. So we just did a quick line check on the mic only, and then that was it. We were the second band out of 4 bands to play that day, and it was a nightmare on stage. We looked so unprofessional that it was like what should have been a 10-minute quick before you play sound line check turned into, like, I don't know, more than a half hour of trying to figure out, why is this not working? Why is that not working? I didn't bring one of these cabs because they have a huge PA system, and I didn't get my own real monitor. I had to ask him while on stage, sound checking in front of, like, I can't remember, 300-400 people, that I need my amp through the monitor in front of me. I got to be able to hear me, because I wasn't hearing me in my in-ear at all. We were having issues with what was going through our in-ear system from what he did, and it was a nightmare. And once we started actually playing, I was way too loud in the monitors in front that were facing me that I couldn't really hear anything else. And it was like, oh my God, like even our singer had to stay away from my side of the stage because like you couldn't hear anything but me. And it's like I kept trying to go like this, like guitar down, and yeah, never, just, it was a nightmare gig. So that was the only real bad instance that I wish I had a tube amp. I could have turned it down or done something differently. But like with the in-ear monitoring system, if I turned down the volume on the head rush, it would turn down all of the mix for me. And it was just like, it was just a nightmare. So, all right. So another quick add-in I forgot to mention as I was doing my edit is that another bad thing that I found about the digitally modeling in our instance is that we had purchased the second head rush board, the drummer in the band, and for our other guitar player to use, and he wanted to basically, I completely copy the one I'm using, like the amp sim, the IRs and everything for the other guitar player for live and for recording. But the issue we had, we bought it used, and that the USB that was on here, which is we're here, the USB that's connected here, there was an issue with it. So we had to get it repaired, and it was a $400 repair. He had to send the head rush board to the other side of Canada, to Quebec, where they had to make the repair, order a part. They had to wait months for the part. I think it was a solid, I can't remember, 5-6 months before we got the head rush board back. So repairing these digital boards can be very expensive as well, and that's something I don't want to deal with ever if this one breaks down. So just wanted to throw that in there, that repairing these boards can be quite costly. So that was like the only bad instance having the head rush. Now I find it really convenient. Like at home, a lot of the time I use the big head rush here in my music room with one of these 112 cabs, and then I have this little guy, this little 8-inch speaker one, powered cab that I keep up in another room with the little head rush board for practicing when I want to be upstairs, when I be hanging out with family or not being too far away. And I would actually use that. So it's convenient in that you can get such small of a setup, right, to use. And being at home, traveling, it was so condensed. It was nice. Now, as far as feeling the real thing, I'll just say that there's nothing that will beat this, the true amp sound jamming with people in a room. When I want to write riffs, I use this. I like to crank it, really feel the air. As they say, you feel the air moving. You don't really get that with these powered cabs or even through PA. Like when we would rehearse, we had in-ears. Even though we had a decent like PA system in our jam room, we used in-ears for everything. Even if we didn't have the guitars going through the PA, I'd have it in the in-ears. Now there's just something that like, it's just such a close condensed sound that it's not, I guess I could say it's not as inspiring when you want to write music. So with my current metal band Castigate, I use my Rev head. This is my favorite head of all time. I love this 40-watt tube head. I actually use it through two 212 cabs, and I put one on each side of the jam room. And for that, We just use real monitors for vocals, the drum set, the bass, and there's just something magical about that real sound. There's like a pureness almost to that to write music in a band context, like everybody's jamming, writing songs. I don't think anything beats that really. The in-ear system way that my other band had gone to, using digital modelers through the in-ears and whatnot, I think that's a great setup if you've already got your music kind of written ahead of time. Like everybody's kind of written their parts and then you just come in to rehearse. I think that's the best time to have a digital modeling system. But for me, there's nothing that'll beat this. Now, like, I know there's arguments on YouTube on tube amps are going to become extinct and all this. I don't believe that, because there's just something so pure about this sound and the difference in amps and whatnot. The nice thing about digital modelers is that you can have so many different amps in one unit. That part I like, in that if I want to one day, recording here at home, like if I want to have a 5150 sound, if I want to have a dual rectifier sound, if I want to have an Engel sound, try something different. There's all these different amps. Even if I want to try like clean stuff, like lately when I'm recording my own home demos, I'm using a Roland Chorus amp sim in there, or I'm using an old Fender Plexi, and I'm experimenting. So with recording at home, I think it's a great setup to have. But when I come to writing the music, like writing the riffs, kind of getting the ideas down, the true tube amp is the way to go. And that's my opinion. That's just from all my experience. Like 2+ years of using the digital setup, the digital amp modeler setup for jamming in the band I was in and for touring and whatnot. It was very convenient. And that's what I think the amp modelers it's a convenience factor. I think more than anything, especially if you're a rehearsed band, you go out on the road, your space, like everything's expensive now. Traveling is expensive. You have to cut corners where you can, save money where you can. So that's why I think the digital modeler system is really great for that. But as far as like a big sound, if you have a good PA system, the amp sim works really well. Like I actually had a gig once back in 2016 that was a huge stage, and it was for a big festival where we played at a baseball stadium. And I actually, the 412 cab that I used, they provided me with a Marshall 412, and I used my dual rectifier head, wasn't enough for an outside gig like that. Playing to, I don't know, 15,000 people, that wasn't enough. That's about the only time. Any other time you're playing gigs, most bar gigs and whatnot, this is actually probably even more than you need. So that's why I like the 212. The 212 is condensed enough. It's easier to carry around, easier to go up and down stairs if stairs are involved. It's easier on your back as you age. And I just find that right now my favorite setup is a smaller tube head, 40 to 50 watt. Right now, I'm really eyeballing getting what is it, the 5153 Stealth head, and a 212 cab. One of my Rev cabs probably would work just fine, but even getting a matching 212 cab, not a 412, just a 212 cab, it's more than enough sound than what you really need. 412s, I think, are going to become the thing that a lot of people are going to condense down to 212s, just because this can be overkill in a lot of venues and a lot of gigs that I've played and I've experienced. But the tube head, I think, is never going to go away. So that's my personal opinion. Thanks for watching today. If you've got a comment, if you've got an opinion, please write it down below. And I'd love to read through them and maybe do a follow-up video down the road. I'm hoping to do some more videos in the next little while, not always guitar review related, maybe. And again, please like, subscribe, hang out. I'll see you again, okay? Shred on. Take care.